This bizarre drone footage, which changed the life of its owner, was shot just a few days ago. Jake, the drone pilot, only wanted to take soothing landscape videos of the coastal area near his house. However, one wrong choice quickly spiraled out of control as his camera spotted an island that did not appear on any map. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any news stories. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, light breeze, and the ocean stretching endlessly before him. Jake bought the drone for coastal photography, hoping to build a portfolio for his amateur travel blog. But little did Jake know that he would soon get far more than he bargained for. Jake unpacked the case, powered up the controller, and watched the drone's rotors come alive with a high-pitched hum. The camera feed flickered to life on his phone screen as the device lifted from the cliff's edge and soared out over the rolling wave. The view was breathtaking. Jake adjusted the lens, using his phone to capture sweeping shots of the coast. This was the point where Jake should have stopped. The first few miles went off without a breeze, but then the blue expanse suddenly broke. On his phone, something dark appeared far off in the ocean. Jake squinted. It didn't look like a boat or a shadow. Jake pushed the controls on his remote forward to propel the drone closer to the strange shape. Jake pinched the screen to zoom closer. Through the fog, outlines sharpened. Trees perhaps, then rooftops. The image grew clearer with each second. A small island, surrounded by water that crashed against its tall cliffs on all sides. "What is this?" Jake whispered as he flew his drone over the strange piece of land. Jake switched to the GPS overlay, expecting coordinates to appear so he could verify the island's existence. But the area was blank. The GPS map showed no name or marking, just ocean. Jake guided the drone lower, circling the tree line. The feed stabilized, showing walls half swallowed by ivy, small wooden buildings clustered near a dirt path, and a patch that looked like a garden overgrown with weeds. It looked abandoned, like everyone had gone and left many years ago. But then something moved. Jake froze, staring at the flicker of movement. It had shape, but Jake couldn't determine if it was human. But the figure vanished before he could refocus the camera. Jake was suddenly on a curious exploration mission set in the sky. But it was a mission that required some preparation, one that he didn't bother to take, because if Jake had paid a little closer attention before sending his drone airborne, he would have noticed the low battery level of his new toy. Within seconds, Jake had lost control as he saw his drone fall from the sky and tumble toward the ground of the mysterious island below. A soft thud was heard on the recording connected to Jake's phone, and after it, the footage went completely dark. The feed was gone, and Jake couldn't have felt more stupid. He needed to retrieve his drone, and while doing it, he could learn more about the island he'd just discovered. There was no other option. He copied the GPS coordinates and placed them in a search engine, but nothing came up. No record, no images, no mention of an island at those numbers. How could a whole island with buildings not be listed anywhere online? Jake needed a boat, but he most of all needed a second pair of eyes. With his drone missing, he knew he might act irrationally and, with it, maybe put himself in danger. Jake needed a calming presence, someone who might make sense of this mysterious place. And Jake knew no one better than his friend Maya. But once Jake entered her shop, he was met with confusion and a strange feeling of resentment. Maya barely glanced at the evidence before shaking her head, telling him not to spend too much time thinking about a strange, blurry image. Jake felt uneasy at how quickly she dismissed the footage. Usually, she was the adventurous one, eager for any unexplained mystery. Why wasn't she even curious? Her indifference didn't fit the person he knew, leaving Jake suspicious. As he left the travel agency, he looked back and caught Maya watching him from the window. Her expression looked nervous, almost worried. Jake spotted a small boat rental shack and stepped inside, ready to plead his case. He explained the drone footage, the mysterious island, and his intent to explore. But the owner's face tightened with unease. He told Jake it was probably fake, a trick of the light, and warned him not to chase ghost stories. The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Jake frustrated. Why was everyone brushing him off? Why was nobody curious? Walking along the dock, the mystery grew larger in his mind. Then he heard a voice. A young man named Wilson, the owner's son, approached him quietly. He said the island was real. He had overheard his father whispering about it with other men late at night. Wilson explained he was an experienced sailor and owned a small boat hidden east of town. Away from curious eyes, they could sail unnoticed. Looking at Jake, he offered to take him there. If Jake wanted the truth, he would go too. They left the docks quietly, walking along the shore until they reached a hidden beach behind tall cliffs. With the sun high, they set off into the open sea, driven by adrenaline and curiosity. As the small boat cut through the waves, a thick bank of mist rose ahead, shrouding everything in pale gray. The closer they got, the more imposing it seemed. Wilson steered into a small cove at the base of the cliffs. Searching along the base, they found a narrow passage cut into the cliffside barely wide enough to climb. Panting, they took in the rugged landscape before spotting a cluster of houses in the distance. The island was untamed, yet clearly inhabited. Jake recognized them from his drone footage. But before they could move toward the buildings, Jake noticed something glinting in a thorny bush nearby. He rushed over and froze. It was his missing drone, miraculously intact. As if by a miracle, the drone's power light flickered back to life, automatically activating the camera feed on Jake's phone. He felt the buzz in his pocket and quickly pulled it out. The display showed the drone had been recording all along. Its battery had died mid-flight, but the standby mode had continued filming everything around it. Jake's pulse quickened as he saw there were nearly 3 hours of new footage. He and Wilson crouched close, watching the screen. Faint murmurs appeared in the static. The sounds grew clearer, turning into human voices chanting softly in an unfamiliar rhythm. Blurry shapes flickered between frames, silhouettes near the cluster of houses. Wilson's jaw tightened. There were people here. Jake's breath caught as a figure suddenly filled the frame. An elderly woman, crouched before the lens, her dirt-streaked face lit by the drone's blinking light. Jake and Wilson exchanged uneasy glances. Their curiosity, however, overpowered their fear. They began walking toward the settlement. The village looked anything but abandoned. Doors hung half open, and clotheslines held damp sheets swaying gently. A sudden flicker drew Wilson's gaze to a second-story window, where a curtain shifted before falling still. Someone was watching them. In the center of the village stood a small wooden chapel, its door sealed tight. Pale light flickered through its cracks. Wilson approached, testing the handle. It rattled, but the door wouldn't open. Then a single, loud knock echoed from within. Both men jumped back, hearts pounding. 3 figures emerged from behind nearby buildings, blocking their route. Their clothes were tattered, faces rough and sunburned. They didn't speak. Jake and Wilson turned to retreat another way, only to find more people stepping out to block that path too. Within moments, they were surrounded. Then, with a groan of hinges, the chapel door swung open. A calm voice broke through the tension. "You shouldn't be here." Jake and Wilson turned to see a tall man in a black robe stepping into the light. His presence immediately silenced the crowd further. He raised a hand, his tone measured and composed. "My name is Father Ellis," he said. "No one here will harm you." The villagers lowered their heads slightly as the robed man gestured for the two to follow. "Come inside the chapel," he invited, his calm gaze resting on them both. Inside, the air was cool and dim, the stone walls lined with candles and faded pictures. Father Ellis closed the door, sealing them away from the watching crowd. He motioned to a bench, and they sat at it. "We are a small, private community," he began calmly. "Many of us have lived here our entire lives. Others arrived seeking peace, far from the noise of the outside world. We are not a cult or a threat," he continued. "This place was founded long ago as a refuge. We vowed to live simply, untouched by modern life, not out of fear, but to preserve the peace we built. Not everyone wants to live under modern eyes." Jake listened closely as Father Ellis explained how their ancestors came here decades ago, escaping persecution. They built their own traditions, growing food, sharing labor, caring for one another. Jake told it that people on the mainland reacted strangely whenever the island was mentioned. Even his friend Maya had lied, afraid for him to come. Father Ellis nodded knowingly. "I suspected as much. We haven't visited the mainland in decades. Younger people don't even know we exist. But the older ones remember many fear what they don't understand. Over time, tavern stories turned us into something dangerous, something to avoid. But we're not criminal. We're simply Amish living off the land, guided by faith and simplicity." Jake still struggled to understand the hostility they'd faced. "Those people with angry looks, why did they surround us?" "They weren't angry," Ellis said patiently. "They'd just never seen outsiders before. To them, your clothes, your manner, even that machine in your hand, it all seemed alien." Jake looked at the drone and finally understood. He and Wilson relaxed, their fear slowly dissolving. Father Ellis smiled and invited them to stay for the night. "It's almost evening. You won't make it back before dark." As dusk settled, the two were welcomed into a wooden home where a family offered them bread, vegetables, and warm soup. Laughter filled the small room as children played with hand-carved toys. The peaceful rhythm of life here felt timeless, like stepping into another world. At dawn, the villagers gathered for breakfast and prayer. Father Ellis thanked the visitors for trusting them. "Share only what will keep us safe," he reminded. The message was clear. Respect, not attention, was all they wanted. As the sun rose, Jake and Wilson prepared to leave. Father Ellis shook their hands. "You know the way back," he said kindly. "Let your hearts guide you." From the cliffs, faces waved farewell. Wilson whispered, "I'll never forget this." Jake nodded, feeling the same. Sailing back, the drone safe at their feet, they spoke quietly about everything they had seen. They realized that some stories were meant to be protected, not shared. Once back in town, Jake slipped the footage into his bag, keeping only memories. When Maya asked about his journey, he smiled softly. "You were right," he said. "Some things are better left untouched." He later updated his travel blog not with names or locations, but with reflections on kindness, respect, and understanding. Wilson and Jake stayed friends, both changed by what they'd learned, that the greatest discoveries are not the ones we reveal, but the ones we carry within.